I was walking through the sort of main atrium of the shopping centre one afternoon, and the next thing I remember is waking up, which was completely surreal. I would find out later that a man had jumped from the third floor of that shopping centre, had landed on my back, breaking my back and neck in multiple places. I felt at a complete loss, and I had never met a visibly disabled healthcare worker. So my medical school were brilliant. They came to me when I was still in the high dependency unit, and they said, look, we will support you to return. There was a psychologist at Spinal that was a wheelchair user, and at the time that just blew my mind. I just thought, not even the job I wanted to do, but it was just oh, she is working in this hospital. She's not a patient. That was really, and it just shows, I didn't even speak to her, but it just shows how important just visibility can be for people, I think.
Welcome to the Backup and Thriving Accessible Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Sophie Elwes, and in this series I'll be interviewing a range of guests who are all affected by spinal cord injury. They'll be sharing their travel stories, experiences, and some fabulous advice. Our hope is that listeners will realise that travelling after spinal cord injury is not only possible, but that it can be life-changing too. Welcome to Backup and Thriving, the Backup Podcast. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you on. For those who don't know who you are, would you introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about your journey and potentially how it intersects with backup. Would be really, really great if you would, please.
Sure. So I am Grace. I am a nearly 30-year-old living in London. I am a doctor. And in 2018, when I was a fourth year medical student, I sustained a spinal injury. I sort of did all my rehab at Stanmore, and sort of was aware of backup from a sort of distance then, and then started getting a bit more involved when I was discharged. And now I'm a trustee, and I love it. It's such a fun role to have, and I feel like I've learned so much about how backup works and all the amazing things they do. So that's been a real joy. So it's great talking to anyone from backup as well. And I also am just passionate about disability representation, especially in medicine, and challenging some of the narratives that you have to be standing and walking to be a doctor, etc. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Absolutely. I'll say, you've written a book recently, and I absolutely loved it. It was super interesting, really, really compelling to read and thought-provoking for sure. And I've got some questions to kind of share with you a bit later on about some of your kind of your approaches and your philosophy, I guess, which is a really, really interesting one. Of course, a lot of our audience are spinal cord injured, and there's different ways that people can sustain injuries. I think we are both on the same page in that it absolutely doesn't define us, and it's what happens after, which is important, right? But I wonder, would you be happy to tell a little bit about how old were you when you were injured? You were in medical school at the time, weren't you? And tell us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, just briefly about that would be great.
Yeah, I was 22 at the time. I feel like still really didn't know who I was going to be as a person. I think I was still just loved hanging out with friends and sort of trying to get through medical school. I sustained my injury at a shopping centre in London. I was walking through the sort of main atrium of the shopping centre one afternoon, and the next thing I remember is waking up, which was completely surreal. I would find out later that a man had jumped from the third floor of that shopping centre, had landed on my back, breaking my back and neck in multiple places, but one at T4, which has caused my spinal injury. I was then taken to the Royal London for acute care, and then I spent 10 weeks at Stanmore in sort of spinal rehab, learning, as I'm sure you know, learning to live as a wheelchair user. And then was discharged, and then had about 9 months of sort of navigating the world before I got to go back, return to medical school.
9 months isn't that long by the sounds of it.
Yeah,
I mean, tell me about that time and the challenges that you faced, if you would.
sure. Yeah, actually, when I say 9 months, it wasn't even. I was discharged in January, and I went back in September or maybe August. But I think I needed it. I think it was like the thing that was really the strand of identity that I still had, that I was really holding on to, because I don't know about you, but I felt like after my injury, especially as someone that didn't really know who I was anyway at 22 yet, I suddenly just felt like complete loss of who I was meant to be now. I felt like I didn't have anyone to look to. I didn't have any disabled friends, ashamedly to say now. And I didn't have anyone that I could think, oh, they're living like a good life. Like they've got a partner, or they've got a dog, or they've got whatever they've got. Like I didn't have anyone. So I felt like a completely blank slate. And I think that really pulled me through, thinking I have something that I'm going back to that I was doing before. And it might be really hard, but that sort of kept me going.
I think the question that people would want to know is that, you're a medical student, you're pretty early on your journey. This happens to you. You're paralyzed, right? You're not able to walk. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you did decide to go back to medical school. What was that kind of thought process like? And was there anyone that was kind of influential in that decision, or was it just always a given that that was going to happen?
So my medical school were brilliant. They came to me when I was still in like the high dependency unit, and they said, look, we will support you to return. But they couldn't tell me if there'd been any other cases like this that had happened in the whole of the medical. They told me about some GP that it was like 40 years ago, and I wasn't even sure if it was a real story. So I felt at a complete loss, and I had never met a visibly disabled healthcare worker. I think two things really helped. One was there was a psychologist at Stanmore that was a wheelchair user. And at the time, that just blew my mind. Like, I just thought, not even the job I wanted to do, but it was just like, oh, she is working in this hospital. She's not a patient. Like, that was really and it just shows. I didn't even speak to her, but it just shows how important just visibility can be for people, I think. And then the second thing that was the huge game changer for me was that um, I really took to Instagram and social media to find just wheelchair users. I followed just hundreds just to see what they were doing. It didn't matter where they were. I just wanted to like fill my feed with people that looked like me. And I found one of them was living in Scotland, was a doctor who was also had a spinal injury and was a full-time wheelchair user. And that I reached out to her, and she kindly had a phone call with me. And it was just, I think that was the real game changer for me, because it felt like it didn't sound easy. She didn't sugarcoat it by any means, but I thought, okay, someone else in this country is doing that. It can't be, completely out of the realms of possibility. So that was huge.
Mm. It sounds like it. It's that expression, isn't it? If you can't be what you can't see. It just sounds so simple, but it's so meaningful, certainly in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that I still haven't met her. I mean, we call sometimes. I just knowing that she exist is just, was the huge thing. But I think it was still really hard going back, because not only I could barely actually get dressed like on my own. Like that was kind of something I was still not very good at. And so trying to get changed into scrubs in front of like these other medical students that I didn't know that year very well. I also felt like this huge it's difficult. The sensational nature of my injury meant that I kind of assumed most people knew what had happened to me. So I felt like coming into it when everyone sort of already knew what had happened and had maybe made their mind up about what I was like, or my story, that was really hard to navigate as well.
Do you mean that it was hard people knowing what had happened because it was sensationalized?
I think so. I found it really hard at the start of my injury, especially when I was still in hospital, and there was a lot of news articles about what happened, and they'd found photos of me from like on Google from years ago, and I felt completely out of control of my own dialogue and my own story, and I didn't actually know how I felt about any of it yet. But everyone was telling me how I should feel, and that people were writing articles with their opinions, and I found that so difficult. Probably one of the most difficult things about my injury was not feeling control of what people were saying, or the fact that I had no platform. Um, but then I got out of hospital and I actually started to realize that I can use the nature of my injury, to tell people like on shows or podcasts, and then get to talk about what I want to talk about. So I
Mm,
think I've started. I've found it to be a gift in the end.
interesting. Um, I think people, and I'm keen to hear about, going back to medical school, being a full-time wheelchair user, what that was like and what the most challenging things you found were.
I think it was really hard because they wanted to support me, my medical school, but they had no idea what I was going to be capable of doing. They kind of looked to me for a lot when I barely knew what I could do, and I think I was starting with quite a low expectation. I just thought, well, how am I supposed to do any of this? Because I've never seen anyone else do it. Like, how am I supposed to? And then they'd ask me about sort of infection control and keeping my wheelchair clean. And I thought, I don't know, like, there's no guideline, there's no template for this. So I felt like it was a lot of figuring that out on my own. But like, as I say in the book, I'm also was really grateful that they were so supportive and like let me lead, because I've spoken to so many people have reached out to me that are younger disabled people, maybe at school, that have been told by some authority figure, oh, no, you can't, no, don't apply for medical school, or don't apply for nursing, or don't apply for OT, because you're not going to be able to do that. And it just takes one person to say, no, you can't do that. I mean, who are they to question them if they've never seen someone? So I think it did make me realize that the majority of doctors who are wheelchair users, at least that I know now, became disabled or had their injuries during medical school. It's much easier to then return because you have got in, they know you, they want you to complete your studies. I think it's really hard for young disabled people to maybe just have the confidence to even apply.
Yeah, I can imagine. Where are you at the moment with are you qualified? Are you a junior doctor? Remind me.
Yes, I think I'll be a junior doctor for, oh God, long time. I finished my foundation training and I actually started paediatrics this month.
Oh,
So
wow, that's exciting.
yes.
How's it going? And why pediatrics?
Um, it's going really well. Actually, I'm really, really happy that my team is so supportive, and I don't know if you found this, but I think as I've grown up as a disabled person, as my injury has become further away, like I'm just a wheelchair user now, I think I'm much more confident existing in spaces and knowing I deserve to exist in these spaces and not being fussed if people are a little bit weird or a bit uncomfortable. I can kind of um I've got more confidence now. So that's been really nice to know that. I think I always wanted to do pediatrics ever
Okay.
since. I never had a pediatric job like in foundation. I just always knew kids is what I wanted to do. My grandfather was a pediatrician, so I love the idea of being a part of someone's childhood. I was quite unwell as a kid, and I like really appreciated the really kind doctors. And I realized actually I did some taster days after my injury, and I realized how great kids are with wheelchairs. Actually, in comparison to adults, I just feel like it's much. I don't know. There's not this discomfort or awkwardness, or they'll happily ask questions that may be a bit more blunt, but they're so much more accepting of, oh no, I just, my legs don't work very well, I use a wheelchair. There's no, maybe they haven't had time to kind of develop any bias or stigma yet. So it's really nice working with kids. Yeah.
How refreshing. Adults are complicated.
Exactly.
Aren't they? Something you said, Grace, I have to kind of pick up is about that taking space and feeling confident to kind of, own where you are and take up that space. Tell us a little more about that. And I think that's something that a lot of us, would love to be more comfortable with, myself included. What have you got any advice for listeners around how to take that space comfortably?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, and I still, struggle. I don't get it right all the time. But I think what I realized after my injury was it took me a couple of years to realize that every time someone was uncomfortable around me or said something a bit weird, and then or felt like I was like the elephant in the room to people, or I felt out of place in any way, um, I realized I didn't have to take that in and internalize it and it be my issue. It was actually the other person's issue. It's their problem. I don't need to carry that with me. That is their own crap to deal with. And I realized it was just a projection of their own ignorance. It's nothing actually to do with me. So that was mind blowing to me. And I think sitting in other people's discomfort is really hard, especially as someone that really likes to please people and tell people everything's okay. Sitting in that is really a good exercise, and I would recommend people try and do that more. That's what I think the first step for me. Like I write in the book about how this woman, this instructor made me feel really uncomfortable and singled me out, and then I sort of called her out on it, and then she went over to me and apologized. And instead of doing the thing that I always do, which is I say, "No, it's fine, don't worry," I just sat. I just said, "Okay," and it was huge for me. That sort of exercise and just not minimizing how it made me feel, just sitting in her discomfort.
I love this so much. It's really, I think it takes a lot of people a very, very long time, to get to that point, particularly around the sort of other people's stuff and, not letting it be kind of feel like a reflection on you. It's huge, huge. Thank you for sharing that. So the theme of this podcast is about travel, really. It can be very daunting with a spinal cord injury. There's a lot of stories out there, post-COVID, people are scared. But, we both know it's possible. I know you've traveled a fair bit. Tell me about your experiences with kind of traveling both here and abroad since your injury.
I think I always loved traveling before my injury. I just had done I had just been to Palestine for 3 weeks and Jordan just before my injury. And I remember having my injury and thinking, oh, well, I can't do that anymore. That's not for me, etc. And it took me a while to when I was once I was discharged and stable to think I really need to start somewhere. I need to go somewhere. I need to try it. And my partner and I maybe chose the worst place possible that you could go as a wheelchair user, which was Venice. And it was almost, it was a bit of a baptism by fire, but I think it was kind of great in a way because it was hard. Lots of carrying up steps and lots of difficult things. But I think, and it probably could have put me off for life, but I think it was good to have to just go in, just get stuck in. And I think I've now traveled loads to lots of places. Luckily, I'm trying to be a bit kinder to myself about what is good travel, what's worth it, and what is not, maybe as a wheelchair user, or what's not. I don't do 6 a.m. flights anymore. I can't. And I really value if I can get a train somewhere. I would rather do that. And I think I don't put myself through situations that I know are going to be really tricky just for a 2-day, 3-day trip, I think. So I think I'm trying to find the balance between being adventurous and wanting to explore, but also recognizing that travel can be a bit tricky. And sometimes the experiences don't make you feel very nice. And so it's still worth it, in my opinion. But I just think I need to, I'm finding the balance, really.
I love that. It sounds smart, I've got to say, your first experience of going to Venice and the way that you kind of see that really speaks to your character. I'm not sure I'd be that person for sure if I'd had that kind of trip early doors. It's so formative, isn't it? Those burst experience of travel.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think I guess what I would like really want to share for people is like it's never too late to start traveling or start going somewhere. Like, I don't think you'll mind me sharing, but one of my great friends, Vince, who I met at Stanmore in rehab, he's a power wheelchair user. So I got married in July, in Istanbul, which is also like not.
Oh, no way. I didn't realize you got married
Yeah,
there. Wow, that's amazing.
it was great. Not the most accessible city either, but you make things work. But he hadn't flown since his injury, like, and that's been like 7 years. But he wanted to come. He was like, "This is my goal. I'm going to come to your wedding," and he did it, and it was like amazing. And I think it's just shows you, yeah, you don't have to cut yourself off if you think, "Oh, it's been 5 years. I'll never be able to." I think that's amazing.
Yeah, totally. I really liked what you said about kind of managing it for yourself. I think that's really, really powerful. And I think a lot of us, will kind of push ourselves. We'll see someone else doing that and we think, oh, we have to do that. I have to do that. And, not take it easy. I can't kind of take the easy route. I need to do that. I was going to ask you what kind of hacks or tricks you have discovered in your experiences of travel. And that actually sounds like such a good one. Be kind to yourself and don't take a stupidly early flight if you don't need to. Spend a little bit more money, still get a cheap flight, spend a little bit of money, and yeah, worth
Yeah.
it.
I think that's absolutely what I would say if you're able to, because I think you're right, and I think I also actually have been taking into account how I feel just separate from my injury, is that I don't like moving every 2 days different places. I can't cope with that. That's not even to do, I think, with my disability. I just don't like doing that. But I love, like, my friend Katie, who came to my wedding as well, took a train. She was also a wheelchair user. She took a train all the way. It was
Did
unbelievable.
she?
It was
Wow.
amazing. I was so inspired. It was so cool. She, like, documented the whole thing. But I know that's not for me. I love that she's doing that, but that's not for me. I think actually just mentally, I can't cope with that. So yeah, I think it's being kind to yourself and knowing, maybe thinking, what about if I don't like, I think especially with a spinal injury, like, days are so unpredictable of how you might feel, how you might sleep, that I try and think, what about if I just actually felt really rubbish that day? I should make it as easy as possible for me to have a flight. And I think, yeah, I think it's saying yes and saying no is also really important. I don't want people to just say no to things, but I think valuing the trips that you're like, that will be really good and that will be worth even having a not very nice airport experience. That the whole trip will be great and that will be worth it. And then some trips and, you know, say no
I
to.
love it. I love it. I love it. So great. You're speaking my language for sure. Grace, have you got a favorite trip or adventure or something that you've been on since your injury, besides your lovely wedding in Istanbul, which is so cool that you had it there? Anything
You.
come to mind that you'd like to share about?
I've got two, I think. I think the most recent trip I did actually was our honeymoon. We went to Georgia and Azerbaijan, and it was amazing. And like, I didn't know anything about these places, but Azerbaijan was so accessible. It was so lovely. Um, and it's again, I still have this thing where I think, God, I 7 years ago I would never imagine I could get here, just because I think the bar was so low, but that was so adventurous, and like we went on to these mud volcanoes, on a tour of these, and these like and I just think, okay, that's going to be like really inaccessible. No, they had like a full raised platform. I could see everything, and you don't know until you kind of actually try these places what is out there. So I think that's huge. I think for me, one of my favorite trips, it wasn't that big, but it was so exciting for me because I went on my own. And it was a couple years ago. I was kind of really in the depths of writing this book, and I was just bored of writing at home. I just was sick of it. And Nathan, my husband, was going to be in Barcelona. So I said, I'll meet you there, but I'm going to get the Eurostar, which is the best form of transport, I think, for wheelchair users. It's amazing. It's cheap. You get business class seat. It's just, anyway, 10 out of 10. So I went on my own. I stayed on my own in Paris. I just wrote. I didn't go and see anything. I just found an accessible cafe and a bar that I liked, and then I just wrote in them. And then I got a 7-hour train from Paris to Barcelona, which was also fully accessible. And it was like a 3-day trip, but it was huge for me. So that was the first thing I'd done on my own. And I just felt so confident, and it was all really a pleasant experience. And it was no flying, which, the trains were great. And I think that gave me a huge confidence boost, actually.
Yeah, love that. Love that. That's my decision made. I want to go to Barcelona again. Haven't been since my injury. Go really 2 trains. That's wicked.
Really, really nice. So I think, it's kind of when you don't even know what's out there really until you have a look around.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, kind of on that, if speaking to someone who perhaps is newly injured and wants to go traveling, maybe had, traveled before their injury, besides the fabulous advice that you've given, what would you say specifically to them to encourage them that traveling is possible and brilliant and can be brilliant?
I think for me, what really helped is set goals that are like achievable. Because I think when you're first injured, for me, everything felt huge. Everything I did for the first time, going to the peeing in a pub on my own for the first time was this huge milestone. So I think I remember the first time I got on a train on my own, I went to visit my friend who was in student halls, medical residence in Medway, and it's
in where?
Medway, yeah, not the most exotic place to go, but I remember shaking on the train because I thought, oh my God, I'm on a train on my own. No one else is here. I've managed to get the guy to put the ramp out, and it was so I just went there for 5 hours, came back, but it was huge because it's like the start of something, and then you build up. So I think for me, I think it's these. You don't have to do a giant flight for your first thing. You could just, do that. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think for me as well, community tips have been really helpful because no one, it's really hard to find. I remember when I did my first long haul flight, I was like, how am I going to pee? How am I going to self-catheterize on this flight? Actually, I don't know if the toilet, because it seems very variable if there's going to be toilets on the flight, and I don't want to into it. All this stuff, the really practical stuff that you just have to get from word of mouth, I think, from other wheelchair users is really helpful.
Tell me more about that. I know that you said in the beginning that you connected a lot, particularly on social media, to other people with disabilities and other wheelchair users and stuff. Tell me a bit more about that in terms of, for maybe newly injured people or people who are not so connected, why that might be helpful and has been helpful for you.
I think, honestly, even if you don't speak to many of these people that you follow, I think it is huge to just fill your feed with people that are disabled. It was huge just subconsciously for my mindset and my feelings of identity, and because I think for me, at least, when I came out of hospital, I felt like I had returned from this war that no one else had been involved in, and all my friends, none of my friends are disabled. None of them they can empathize, but none of them could really appreciate what was happening to me in my head. So I think it was huge to just be able to look at my phone and see wheelchair users doing really cool, wild things, but also just having a job and a family and just living a nice life. And I think that was huge. I don't even think you need to speak to anyone. It's just representation, I think, is really helpful for your brain. But I think it really, when I became a trustee and looking around the room and being so surprised that at least 50% or the majority of people in that room were wheelchair users, that's huge. You don't get that in most situations. You don't get to feel like the majority in most situations. So if you can get yourselves in situations like that, whether you do a course or you do an event or you whatever. I think that's huge for your confidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge part of what backup do. Of course, it's all about kind of peer support. And yeah, I know for me, speaking to others, others who get it is just massive. It just, feel less alone. I think in terms of any sort of experience that we go through, I think speaking to someone who's been through that as well is just massive. Spinal cord injury is so unique a lot of the time, and as try as they might, family and friends, they're not going to understand what it's like, So yeah, it's powerful stuff for sure.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, it just makes you feel less alone. Just makes you feel like you've got the community, I think is really important.
Definitely. I have a question which I'm very interested to hear the answer to from you, which is there a myth or a misconception about life with spinal cord injury that you'd like to challenge, Grace?
I think for me, what I find particularly annoying is the wrong word. I find it really difficult as well, the first few years of being injured is that I felt like now I kind of don't, I just ignore it. But I feel like when you're in spaces, people assume that you are like acutely dealing with your injury. Like it's just like it's like something so they barely can say any words about it because it's like they think they'll remind you of the awfulness of your situation. But also that you're like thinking about it all the time. I don't think about it at all. Like I don't, it's really interesting to me that I can like forget a bit, right? I can forget how I'm perceived because it's like it's just but for them it's this huge thing that they have to sort of say out loud in the room or they have to acknowledge or they have to tiptoe around. And I think that frustrates me a lot because and I'm sure, to be honest, I'm sure I did it before my injury. I kind of I think immediately imagine yourself in that situation and you think, oh my God, that sounds so difficult. And I think, yeah, it was difficult. Now it's fine. It's just my life. Like I've recovered, I'm doing well. So I think that for me is this like acuity that I find really annoying and difficult to explain to people that it's like, it's fine, I'm okay. I don't want to reassure people that I'm living a good life all the time because I am. And I think I've stopped doing that now. I think I'm better at just being like, I don't have to convince everyone I'm around living a good life. I can just know that. And then if they don't, that's fine. That's like not my problem, I think.
I love that so much. I also was sort of laughing a little bit to myself about, when people, to me, it's about, and I think you're probably on the same lines, the word disabled. Some people don't want to say it. They think it's like a swear word kind of thing.
The more you don't say it, the more it seems like it's some terrible thing that I've been afflicted by or something. So yeah, it's really, and I've had doctors do that. I've had doctors not be able to say it to me, and it makes me really concerned because I think you're going to have disabled patients that you can't even acknowledge who they are. So yeah, I think it's tricky.
It is tricky, isn't it? I was super interested to read about your kind of approach to acceptance in your book, and I'd love you to share a little bit about that and your kind of philosophy about it, because I think it's universal within this community about that acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it felt like I was trying to accept my injury and I was trying to accept what had happened, and that sort of acuteness with it, I was accepting it. I was no longer in denial. I also then went through this whole period of, well, what if this hadn't happened? What if I did? And that was really, I really wanted to get through that because it just felt useless. It didn't feel like it was helping me in any way. I felt like I was just like stuck in this sort of cycle of, well, what if this hadn't happened? And so for me, confronting that with like I could have died, that was another what if. So I can't just keep saying, what if I hadn't had an injury? I could just, I should be like, I started becoming quite grateful, I think, for being alive and being able to experience the things I experience. But I think for me, what was huge was recognizing that I'm not only accepting this injury, I'm embracing it. I'm really jumping all in. I'm embracing the community. I'm embracing my new identity. I'm embracing the things that I've learned through my injury and the people I've met. And for me, I call it radical acceptance because to me, it doesn't just feel like this individual acceptance of my injury. It feels radical when you start to question society's depiction of disabled people in the media. You start to question why most of the infrastructure that we're around is not accessible. You start to question why people feel like they can ask you what's wrong with you or tell you really out of pocket things to your face when you've just met them. I think it was like this criticalness that was really helpful to me to start looking critically at society and unpicking ableism rather than just my own sort of private journey.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think what people would want to know, you talk about the sort of the things to be grateful for, and I wonder if you could give some examples of that, because of course, there are people in this situation who can't see the wood from the trees, it's dire. So what are some of those things, if you would?
I think for me, I've met some of my best friends through this injury, through my rehab, my time at rehab, but also just meeting them through social media and chatting because there's already, I think when you meet someone else with a spinal injury, there's already such a recognition there. I find that really special. I can nod to someone on the street and I just feel like we kind of know each other in a way already. I might not I might not get on with all people that have spinal injuries, but there's something there, and I think that's really special actually. And I think I found that at work. The connections I have with disabled patients, the understanding that's there that doesn't have to be built is really a gift, in my opinion. I think it's brought. I think an injury like this, or when something this event happens, it's it's really forced me to have quite honest conversations with my friends and family, because you're suddenly in in many more positions of vulnerability, of having to have people take care of you and have, and I think that actually has brought us a lot closer together. But I recognize that I'm really lucky. I don't have carers. It's if I need care, my husband or my family or my friends can help me get into a car or whatever I need to do. Um, so I'm in a position of privilege there, but I think that's brought us a lot closer together. The relationships I have, I also just think I value them a lot more. I think for me, it's turned me into much less of a people pleaser, and I feel much more anchored to myself because I've had to build it up again from kind of scratch. And that took a couple of years, but I think that's something that my injury has brought me.
Do you think there's anything that you have done or practiced that has helped you kind of get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's talking to disabled people, not even just all people with spinal injuries, but just disabled people in general. I think it's reading books by disabled people. I think it's learning a bit of the culture of disability, the history of the disability rights movement. I think it is a culture that we have. And I think it's an odd one because it's we suddenly have become a minority, but our family is not the same. So it's an interesting one, and I think that really helped me feel like I had a community, or I had a place in a community, was learning about other disabled people and what they had done. So I think those were the huge things. I think writing for me has been a huge thing for my recovery as well.
Love it. So last couple of questions. You've obviously written your book, so no doubt you're kind of riding the wave of that and enjoying the success from that. Alongside your work, what have you got any kind of projects or adventures or trips beyond enjoying newly married life? What's up next for you, Grace?
I think I wanted to really survive the first month of work, and I've done that. So I'm happy about that. I think really throwing myself into paediatrics is really exciting for me. I'm still doing quite a lot of book talks, which is really fun, other job to have. But I think for me, I'd really like to. The book was an amazing thing to do. I love doing it, but I'm ready to talk about something else. I'm ready to talk to other people about their stuff, or talk about write some new stuff. I'm just ready. I'm done, I think, with it. I'm really happy, but that chapter is closed, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for whatever will be next.
Awesome. Love that. It's really interesting. Finally, to round things off, it would be great to hear your advice for people listening about how to live well with spinal cord injury.
I think for me, I think it's about starting small. Absolutely. You can't climb the whole mountain. Just, start by going to the shop or the cafe or the pub that you want to go to or whatever. I think a huge thing for me was to stop comparing myself to others or thinking I had to fit into this box that I feel a lot of society puts disabled people in, where you have to be this amazing Paralympian athlete or it's like a superstar or something. I think you have to figure out what you want to do on your own. I also, for me, I found actually that my injury is an opportunity to try new things. I think, like, for a long time, I felt like I just needed to do the things I did before, but in an adapted way. Like, that would be good. But actually, I'm realizing that I don't have to just. I can try other things. Like water skiing, like sit skiing. That's so fun, and I never thought that would be like something I really enjoyed, or just like cold water swimming. Like, I think that's the thing. I was a big climber before my injury, and I've tried it a little bit since, but I don't. It doesn't give me the same kind of sense of joy that other sports do now, and I think that's okay. And like, it's okay to acknowledge that, and it's okay to think about other things. Yeah, maybe what I'm saying is saying no is also okay to things.
Love
I
it.
don't. I feel bad. I'm just telling people to say no, but yeah, when the right times, I think it can be good.
Oh, big time. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the Backup Podcast, Grace.
Thank you so much for having me, Sophie. It's been lovely.